Yo, Navy class is by far the easiest class to do very well with, but I thought it would still be a good idea to make a quick little video and list out some shit I've learned while playing the heavy class to help people get the most out of the class. I'm gonna try to be as descriptive as possible while also trying to be as brief as possible, so without further ado, let's freaking get right into it. First things first, figure out what weapon you're gonna use. In my personal opinion, the Lewis gun and the shotgun are the best, so decide which one suits you. The shotgun absolutely shreds in close quarters, but doesn't have good range, whereas the Lewis is an all-around good gun as it still has some decent damage output even if your enemy is at medium range, but it gets absolutely outgunned in close range by the shotgun. So like I said, decide which one suits your needs. I'd recommend having both equipped, one in your reserve, one in your primary. However, if you use the shotgun, it's very important to know that the gun has a clickety-clackety animation after every 4 bullets you shoot, so be mindful of this. The best way to combat this is to make sure you're constantly reloading every chance you have. So yeah, remember to reload your shotgun frequently because it can cause you some gunfights, and in worst cases it can cost you some games. Now, for your special ability, I highly recommend the shield as I think it's the best special for heavies. The glue gun and the charge are also pretty good, but they're just not as good when it comes to playing around your team. However, if you're on a team with another big boy and they're already running the shield, feel free to use charge or the glue gun as I still think they're pretty solid specials. However, if you're the only heavy on the team, using the shield is your best bet as I think it's the most useful. Since the shield is so useful and in my opinion the best special ability for the heavies, I'm going to quickfire some ways to get the most out of your shield. You obviously use your shield to protect your team, but it's especially important you actually use your shield to protect your team. I know that sounds obvious, but I've played with people who only used shields to protect themselves. So actually using your shield to protect your team is doing much more than the average heavy. If you need to push or cash out, use your shield to get in closer if there's not a safer alternate route. Also, if you see a teammate that's getting absolutely lit up, don't bother trying to shoot the enemy unless they're within kissing distance. Instead, pull out your shield and try to block the bullets from killing your teammate. Always be mindful of your team's health in the bottom left corner of your screen and try to protect your teammates if they're being lit up. Another method of using your shield is if you're in a 1v1 situation. You can use your shield to make the enemy waste their ammo, and when they're shooting your shield, just wait until they're about to reload. If you're a gaming warlord, you can easily kill someone before they finish their reloading animation. Anyways, to summarize shield usage, just prioritize protecting your team. You're essentially a tank, so you should be soaking up all the bullets you can with your shield so your teammates don't have to soak them up with their flesh. Moving on from the shield, let's talk about the equipment now. It all comes down to personal preference, but I think the most important piece of equipment is undoubtedly the bubble shield. No matter what loadout you decide to go with, always have the bubble shield in your inventory as it is practical for multiple situations. You can throw these motherfreakers down onto the cash out before stealing it, and you can also throw them down on the teammate's stat chute to buy you some extra time to get the revive. The bubble shield can also be used as a backup shield for you and your team if your main shield has been destroyed. Also, you can throw your bubble shield so if your teammate is in need of protection but you can't get to them without getting lit the freak up, throw your shield at them. The bubble shield is versatile and the cooldown isn't that long, so feel free to throw it whenever you need to. However, be mindful the bubble shield can get absolutely torn apart in seconds, so use these shields accordingly. Moving on, another good piece of equipment you can have equipped are the barricades. There's a few ways to use the barricades, so I'm going to tell y'all how to do so as efficiently and briefly as possible. The most obvious way to use the barricades is to block vents. This will prevent short kings from getting into the room and biting your ankles. You can also block doorways and holes, but these aren't as effective, so prioritize your barricades to block off vents. This doesn't really mean shit if someone decides to blow a hole into the wall, but if they have no means of destruction, definitely make sure you keep the vent blocked. Another way to get usage out of the barricade is to use them as your last ditch effort if your shields are destroyed and your team is getting pummeled by bullets. You place these down as soon as your main shield is about to be destroyed and you crouch behind them. They can take quite a bit of damage, so they'll give you some time to let your shield recover and give you extra time to try to make a play. Just note that this is only effective if the team shooting you are all in front of you. If they're to your sides and above you, this is useless. So if that happens, you're just fucking dead. But my absolute favorite way to use the barricade is by using them as a means to head glitch. Since you're a big boy, you'll be tall enough enough to where just your head is exposed. You can also poke your gun out and shoot at people over the barricade. If you're getting chased, head into a building and plant yourself in a corner. Place the barricade down and shit on whoever comes into the room. Since only your head will be exposed, the enemies can only hit headshots, and if their aim is booty butt cheeks, this will give you plenty of time to either kill them outright or to make them retreat. However, this only works if no one is shooting you from above or in the back, so I would recommend getting set up in corners when defending an area. One other piece of equipment I like to use is the C4. These do a lot of damage and they can also cause a lot of destruction to the environment. You can use these offensively if you want, but I prefer their defensive capabilities. You simply place some C4 on the ground near the cash out and blow it up whenever someone is stealing it. The only counters to this is if someone else blows up your C4 preemptively, or if someone throws a glitch grenade to disable the C4. Your best bet is to stick the C4 on the ceiling below the cash out so nothing can disable it. You can also put a green canister near your C4, so whenever you detonate it, the area is filled with AoE damage, which will protect your cash out even more. Also, since the C4 is so destructive, feel free to use these to blow holes in the buildings if you need another way to get inside. Another way to use the C4 is if you want to display the fact that you've never kissed anyone in your entire life. You can stick the C4 onto a throwable object and launch it into the direction of enemies that do a freak ton of damage. You can basically one-shot people with this, but if you don't end up one-shotting anyone, you'll always do a lot of fucking damage. However, there's only two reasons you should be doing this. The first reason is the ethical reason. That means you're doing this in self-defense because someone already killed you or your team by using this method. That gives you a reason to retaliate and to use a C4 in this way. However, the only other reason to use this method is if you're a virgin. That's it. I'm sorry. And remember, you don't need to be a virgin to be a virgin. Virginity is a mindset, and sticking the C4 onto an object and launching it at people is the epitome of virginity. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. Also, the only way to defend against this is to use your shield. If you expect the other team to launch a C4 at you, using your shield will not only protect yourself, but it'll essentially protect everyone behind you. However, tanking a C4 will destroy your shield in its entirety, so be ready for whatever comes after that. Another piece of equipment you can and should be using is the RPG. This is undoubtedly a must-have along with the bubble shield in my opinion. You can cause a lot of damage with the RPG, especially if you hit someone directly with it. The cooldown is pretty long, so don't use your RPG just for anything. Pick your targets and make sure they're at an effective range for the RPG. Don't shoot any long range rockets because they're most likely not gonna do shit. So the best way to use the RPG is to obviously shoot people with it. Duh. Sure, you can cause destruction to buildings, but I wouldn't recommend doing that because the RPG doesn't really do that much destruction, and the cooldown is so long that there's really no point. So yeah, shoot people with the RPG and make sure they're not too close, because if they are, you'll do damage to yourself, and if you RPG someone within kissing distance from you, you'll probably just end up unaliving yourself. Although I said you shouldn't be shooting your rockets at buildings, there's a few exceptions. The first exception is that you need to get to the cash out as fast as possible. Feel free to blow a hole into the wall if it will mean you get there faster. However, the best way to utilize your rockets when destroying buildings is when you're defending the cash out. If you're defending the cash out, shoot your rocket at the floor below the cash out to make it fall. You do this just as someone is about to steal your cash out, and shooting a rocket underneath the cash out will cause a hole that the cash out will fall through, and while it's falling, it will most likely interrupt the stealing process, giving you extra seconds for the cash out. I've personally won several games doing this, and when I'm not using my rocket to blow people to smithereens, I'm using my rocket to defend my cash out in this exact method. For the most part, you don't want to use rockets on buildings for the levolution purposes because it doesn't really create that much destruction. However, when you shoot your rocket onto the ground below the cash out, it will cause a big enough hole for the cash out to fall through. It will interrupt that process, and it will give you some extra seconds to make a play. Anyways, that was a very brief guide on how to use the heavy. I wanted to be as concise and straight to the point as possible, but hopefully it still helps at least one person nonetheless. With that being said, remember to stay hydrated and to stay swaggy. Adios.